The Frost Haven Diner wasn't the kind of place that drew crowds. Wedged between an abandoned hardware store and a shuttered pharmacy, the small restaurant occupied a forgotten corner where the mountain town's main street dead-ended into forest. Its windows glowed amber against the perpetual twilight of the northern winter, casting weak halos across snow that never seemed to melt completely. For Ezra Cole, it was home. At 24, Ezra had learned to find comfort in the rhythm of third shift. The hiss of the grill cooling down, the soft country music crackling through old speakers, the occasional howl of wind through the mountain pass. Business had been dying for years. The new resort restaurant 5 miles up the mountain, all floor-to-ceiling windows and farm-to-table menus, had siphoned off most of the tourist traffic. Ezra wiped down the counter, his movements automatic. He glanced through the frost-traced window at the dark forest beyond. A figure stood at the tree line, barely visible in the darkness. Tall, broad-shouldered, utterly still. Ezra blinked, and the figure was gone. The door chime startled him. 3 children shuffled through the entrance, snow clinging to threadbare clothes. They couldn't have been older than 5 or 6, moving with a strange wariness that made Ezra's chest tighten. Their eyes were too alert, too knowing, scanning the empty diner like cornered animals assessing an escape route. The oldest, a girl with tangled dark hair, positioned herself protectively in front of her siblings. A boy with hollow cheeks kept glancing toward the door. The smallest, another girl with bruises barely hidden beneath her collar, trembled despite showing no tears. Their clothes were wrong. Too thin for winter, patched and repatched, hanging off small frames that spoke of missed meals. No coats, no hats. Their lips had a bluish tint. "Hey there," Ezra said gently, recognizing the signs immediately. He'd been that kind of scared once. "Come in out of the cold." The children froze, exchanging glances. Silent communication Ezra couldn't parse. "We don't got money," the oldest girl said, her voice hoarse. It looked warm." "Well, you're in luck," Ezra replied, moving slowly so as not to spook them. "I was about to throw out tonight's leftovers anyway. Health code stuff. Would you 3 be willing to help me out? I hate wasting food." It was a lie. The soup was fresh, the cornbread still warm, but Ezra had learned that pride mattered, especially to kids who'd learned hunger. The children moved to a booth in the corner, the one farthest from the windows and closest to the back exit. Survival instincts. The oldest kept her siblings behind her, watching Ezra with wary intelligence. "I'm Ezra," he said, pulling out his order pad, though he didn't need it. "What are your names?" A long pause. Then, "Mira. This is Cole and Lily. Nice to meet you." Ezra knelt beside their booth, making himself smaller, less threatening. "You 3 out here alone? Where are your folks?" Mira's expression shuddered. "Around." That was all Ezra would get, he knew. He'd been there. "Okay. Well, how about some hot chocolate and grilled cheese? Maybe some soup?" Lily's eyes widened. The first real emotion he'd seen from any of them. "Okay," Mira whispered. Ezra returned to the kitchen, his hands working automatically. Hot chocolate with extra marshmallows, grilled cheese with real butter, tomato soup loaded with crackers. As he cooked, he kept glancing through the service window. The children sat perfectly still, hands folded. Outside, that broad-shouldered figure stood at the forest edge again. Definitely real. Definitely watching. Ezra's instincts prickled. Something about the silhouette felt predatory, but also protective, guarding rather than stalking. He shook off the thought and brought out the food, arranging it carefully. "Here you go. Careful, soup's hot." The children stared at the meal like it was treasure. Mira picked up her spoon with shaking hands, tasted the soup, and her eyes closed. A small sound escaped her. Relief, gratitude, something that made Ezra's throat tight. "Is it okay?" he asked. "It's perfect," Mira whispered. "We haven't. It's been a while." The other two began eating, slowly at first, then with desperate hunger. Not the hunger of skipped lunch, the hunger of days, maybe weeks, of scraps and stolen scraps and nothing. "Listen," Ezra said quietly, sitting across from them. "I don't know your situation, and I'm not going to pry. But this place is open every night. If you three need a warm meal, you come here. Anytime. Understood?" "Why?" Cole asked, his voice barely audible. "We can't pay." "Because you're kids," Ezra said simply, "and kids shouldn't be hungry." When they finished, Mira tried to leave something on the table. A small carved wooden token, intricate and clearly handmade. Ezra recognized it. Mountain folk craft, the kind that took hours to create. "This is too much," Ezra said. "Keep it." "Please," Mira said with quiet dignity. "It's all we have." Ezra accepted it, knowing pride mattered. He walked them to the door, wrapping them in his spare jacket despite their protests. "Stay warm, okay? I'll see you tomorrow?" Mira nodded. "Tomorrow." He watched them leave, 3 small figures disappearing into the snow. The broad-shouldered silhouette stepped from the trees, and the children didn't run. They went to him, and a massive hand, gentle despite its size, rested on Mira's head. Then the snow swallowed them all. Ezra turned back inside, troubled. As he picked up the wooden token, he noticed something carved on the reverse. 3 crescent moons surrounding a wolf's head. The Blackthorn pack symbol. Ezra's blood went cold. He looked up sharply, but the forest was empty. The children were gone. The mysterious figure had vanished. And Ezra Cole, third-shift cook at a dying diner, had no idea he'd just fed the children of Alpha King Cale Blackthorn, the most powerful shifter in the Northern Territories, or that the Alpha had been watching from the shadows, testing something Ezra couldn't begin to understand. The next night, just before closing, the door chimed again. The 3 children stood in the doorway, snow melting in their hair, their pale faces turned toward Ezra with something that looked like hope. "You came back," Ezra said, surprised by the warmth in his own voice. "You said any time," Mira replied. "I did. Come in." The children moved to the same corner booth. Ezra grabbed a towel and brought it over, kneeling beside Cole. "You're soaked. Here." He gently squeezed water from Cole's hair. The boy's skin was ice cold, not just chilly, but unnaturally cold, like touching stone in winter. "You 3 need better coats," Ezra murmured. "This weather will kill you." "We run hot," Cole said quietly. "Usually." Ezra frowned but didn't push. He returned to the kitchen, planning their meal. Hot chocolate with cinnamon. Fresh grilled cheese. Chili this time. Something hearty that would stick to their ribs. When he brought out the steaming mugs, Lily reached for hers immediately. Her small fingers brushed Ezra's hand, and he felt it. That unnatural cold, like she'd been outside for hours despite just arriving. Something wasn't right. But Ezra had learned long ago that right was subjective. What mattered was that they were here. They were hungry, and he could help. "There," he said softly, wrapping Lily's hands around the warm ceramic. "Let that warm you up, sweetheart." The diner's lights flickered. A low hum vibrated through the building, like the mountain itself was sighing. In the mirror behind the counter, Ezra saw something impossible. A crack that had been there for months suddenly sealed itself, the fracture disappearing as if it had never existed. He blinked hard. Long shift. Tired eyes. "Mr. Ezra?" Lily's voice pulled him back. "Are you okay?" "Fine, kiddo. Just tired. Let me get your food." He returned with chili and cornbread, arranging everything carefully. The children ate slowly, savoring each bite with reverence that made Ezra's chest ache. The door chimed. His manager, Ruth, emerged from the back office, clipboard in hand and concern on her weathered face. "Ezra, honey, we need to talk." She gestured toward the children. "You can't keep comping meals. We're barely making rent as it is." "I'll pay for it myself," Ezra said quietly. Ruth sighed. It's not just about money. You're too soft. These kids, they'll keep coming back. Good, Ezra said. They should. Ruth studied him, then shook her head and retreated to her office. But an hour later, when Ezra checked the tip jar, it was fuller than it should be. Not just fuller, exact. Enough to cover both nights of meals plus the heating bill he'd been dreading. He looked toward the corner booth. The children sat in silence, watching snow fall past the windows. Beyond them, barely visible through the storm, that broad figure stood, watch. This time Ezra stared directly at him. Tall, powerfully built, with eyes that glowed faintly amber in the darkness. Not threatening, guarding. Testing, Ezra realized. He's testing something. Time to go, Mira announced, sliding from the booth. Her siblings followed reluctantly. Ezra walked them to the door, holding it against the wind. Snow lashed the parking lot. Here, take this. He grabbed an old blanket from behind the counter. It's not much, but... Thank you, Mira said. Then she paused, her dark eyes fixed on Ezra's face, and spoke with sudden formality. Warmth freely given shall not be forgotten. The words felt ceremonial, ancient. You're welcome, Ezra replied, uncertain. Stay safe. He watched them disappear into the snow. The tall figure moved to meet them, kneeling before the children. Cole reached up to touch his face, a gesture of familiarity, of family. Father, Ezra thought. That's their father. But what kind of father watched from the shadows instead of coming inside? When Ezra opened the diner the next morning for inventory, he found something carved into the wooden doorframe, a symbol he'd never seen before. 3 crescent moons surrounding a wolf's head, etched deep into the wood. It glowed faintly amber, warm to the touch. Ezra's hand trembled as he traced the symbol's curves. Somewhere deep in his bones, he felt something shift, like a contract signed without his knowledge. The bond had begun. Ezra tried sanding the symbol off before Ruth arrived. It wouldn't budge. The amber mark seemed part of the wood itself, as permanent as a brand. He finally gave up and positioned a coat rack over it, but he couldn't stop thinking about it. The evening shift crawled by. A handful of truckers, a couple stopping for coffee, a lone hiker warming up by the radiator. Ezra kept glancing at the clock, wondering if the children would return. They arrived at 8:30, just as the snow started again, but this time, someone else came with them. A man entered behind the children. Tall, lean, dressed in an expensive wool coat that seemed wrong for the setting. His hair was silver blonde, swept back from sharp features, and his smile was too wide, too practiced. He chose a table near the children's booth, folding his hands with deliberate precision. Evening, he said, his voice smooth as oil. Coffee, please. Black. Coming up, Ezra replied, his instincts screaming warnings. He brought the children their usual, hot chocolate, grilled cheese, chili, and noticed how they'd gone rigid. Mira had positioned herself between her siblings and the stranger, her small hands gripping the table edge. The man sipped his coffee, pale gray eyes never leaving the children. Lovely evening. Rare to see young ones out so late without supervision. I'm Marcus Vale. And you are? Mira's face remained blank, but Ezra saw her hands tremble. They're just here for dinner, Ezra interjected smoothly, stepping between the tables. Can I get you anything else, sir? Vale's smile widened. How kind you are. Feeding strays. Very charitable. The word landed like an insult. They're customers, Ezra said firmly. Same as anyone. Of course. Vale took another slow sip. Though one wonders about their guardians. Children shouldn't wander after dark. Dangerous things in these mountains. The threat was gossamer thin, but unmistakable. If you're not ordering food, Ezra said, his jaw tight, I'm going to have to ask you to finish your coffee and leave. Vale stood with fluid grace, leaving exact change on the table. As he passed the children's booth, he paused. Be careful, little ones. Not everyone is as hospitable as this kind young man. Some of us remember the old laws. Then he was gone, the door chiming softly behind him. Ezra exhaled slowly. The children remained frozen until the sound of Vale's footsteps faded. "Who was that?" Ezra asked quietly, sliding into the booth across from them. "A hunter," Cole whispered. "Of our kind." "Your kind?" Mira's dark eyes met his. "Shifters. We're wolf shifters, Mr. Ezra. And he wants to hurt us." Part 2. The Keeper's Choice. After the diner closed, Ezra locked the door and pulled out his phone. The children had left quickly, more frightened than before. He photographed the wooden token they'd given him and searched the symbol. The results made his breath catch. Blackthorn Dynasty, Northern Territories. The most powerful shifter pack in existence, ruling thousands of wolves across 3 states. Articles described Alpha King Cale Blackthorn as ruthless, ancient, and unbeatable. Some sources claimed he'd held power for over 2 centuries. Legends said the Blackthorns weren't just shifters. They were something older, something that predated the modern packs. Ezra closed his phone abruptly. No, that was impossible. But Cole's cold hands, the way their reflections seemed slightly wrong. The figure watching from the forest with glowing amber eyes. The door rattled suddenly. Through the glass, Ezra saw Mira's pale face. "Please," she called. "We need to talk." Ezra unlocked the door. All 3 children tumbled inside, agitated and afraid. "We have to warn you," Mira said urgently. "Marcus Vale, he's part of the Silver Fang. They hunt pack royalty. They know what we are." "And what are you?" Ezra asked, though part of him already knew. Lily looked up with wide eyes. "We're the heirs to the Blackthorn pack. Our father is the Alpha King." "And Vale wants us dead," Cole added, "to start a war." Ezra glanced at the clock. 11:47 p.m. "You need to go home. Now. Where do you live? I'll drive you." "We can't tell you," Mira said. "But we shouldn't have come tonight. We've put you in danger." "Then I'm walking you," Ezra said firmly, grabbing his coat. "I'm not letting you go alone. Not with that creep around." The children exchanged glances but didn't argue. They stepped into the snow together, Ezra holding an umbrella over the children's heads. The street was empty. The forest looming dark and silent. Fog had rolled in, muffling sound. Ezra heard the footsteps before he saw anything. Multiple sets, moving in rhythm, closing in from different directions. "Keep walking," he whispered. Shadows peeled away from the trees. Tall, angular figures that moved wrong, their limbs too long, their eyes reflecting silver light. Hunters. The children pressed closer to Ezra. But as they approached the diner's door, still visible behind them with its amber light cutting through the fog, the shadows hesitated. Shrank back as if something about the building repelled them. "Quickly," Mira urged. They ran the last few steps, practically falling through the door. Ezra slammed it shut and threw the deadbolt, his hands shaking. Outside, the hunters gathered at the edge of the light, watching, waiting. Then slowly, they retreated into the fog. Ezra slid down to sit on the floor, his back against the door, trying to steady his breathing. "What the hell is happening?" he whispered. Before anyone could answer, he noticed it. The symbol on the doorframe. It had been carved deeper, glowing with pulsing amber light that radiated heat against his back. His phone buzzed. A text from Ruth. "Found weird marks on the door. Calling police in morning. Something's not right." The diner lights flickered once, twice, and somewhere in the distance a howl began. Long, a mournful calling. The hunt had begun. The power died instantly, plunging the diner into darkness. Ezra fumbled for candles, lighting them one by one until warm, flickering light pushed back the shadows. The children stood frozen, 3 pale statues in the candlelight. "Sit," Ezra said. "Please." They moved to their booth. Ezra grabbed towels and dried them off, his movements automatic, maternal. When he touched Lily's hand, he felt that unnatural cold again. "Now," Ezra said, sitting across from them. "Tell me everything." Mira folded her hands on the table. "We are Mira, Cole, and Lily Blackthorn, children of Alpha King Cale Blackthorn. The man you saw tonight, Marcus Vale, leads the Silver Fang. They believe our father has grown too soft, that he protects humans when he should rule them. Your father," Ezra said carefully, "the man in the forest. He's been watching." "Testing," Cole corrected. "Testing whether humans would show kindness or cruelty. Most show cruelty." "You're the first who's just been kind," Lily whispered, "without asking questions, without wanting something." Ezra felt his throat tighten. "You're just kids, that's all I saw." Outside, the snow intensified, turning from flurries to blizzard. Through the windows, Ezra saw shapes gathering, tall silhouettes forming a ring around the diner, more than before. Dozens. "They're here," Mira whispered. The children moved closer together. Ezra stood, placing himself between them and the door. A voice drifted through the wind. Vale's voice, smooth and cold. "Ezra Cole, you harbor what is not yours to protect. Surrender the Blackthorn children, and you will be spared. This is mercy. I offer it once." The candles flickered wildly. Ezra's hands clenched into fists. "Get behind the counter," he said quietly, "and stay there." The door opened. Vale stepped inside, flanked by 2 hunters in dark coats whose eyes gleamed silver. They moved with predatory grace, their footsteps silent. Behind the counter, Ezra heard the children's sharp intakes of breath. "Mr. Cole," Vale said, his smile sharp, "your time has expired. Step aside." Ezra's legs felt like water, but he forced himself forward. Not away from the children, but toward them. He positioned himself between the booth and Vale, gripping a cast-iron skillet he'd grabbed from the kitchen. "They're under my roof," he said, his voice shaking but audible. "They're eating. You can wait." Vale's laugh was soft, pitying. "Brave. Foolish. But brave. Do you comprehend what you're protecting? These aren't children. They're monsters wearing innocent faces." "They're kids," Ezra shot back, "and they came here hungry." The windows exploded inward. Not shattered. Exploded. Glass and snow and wind burst into the diner like divine wrath. Ezra threw himself over the children's booth, shielding them as shards flew past. Through the chaos, a figure stepped across the threshold. He was massive, easily 7 feet tall, his presence filling the space like a storm contained in human form. His hair was black as midnight, his eyes burning amber gold. Power radiated from him in waves, primal and absolute. Cale Blackthorn, the Alpha King. His gaze found Ezra first, crouched over his children, a skillet held like a weapon. Then it moved to Vale, and the temperature dropped 10 degrees. "Vale," Cale's voice rolled through the diner like distant thunder. "They are eating." Vale went rigid, his hunters taking an involuntary step back. "My lord," Vale said, recovering. "We did not expect—" "You entered a place of hospitality," Cale continued, his words measured and cold. "While my children were at table, you threatened violence against someone offering shelter. Explain." "This human has broken sacred law," Vale countered. "He feeds royal blood without sanction. This is blasphemy." "This is the Pack Covenant," Cale interrupted. His amber eyes shifted to Ezra. "Is it not?" Ezra straightened slowly, his heart hammering. Behind him, the children pressed against his back, taking shelter. "I don't know about covenants or laws," he said. "They were hungry. That's all I saw." Silence stretched like a blade. Then something shifted in Cale's expression. Not softening, but cracking slightly. "To you, it matters not," he said quietly. "To us, It changes everything. He turned back to Vale. I invoke the old law. This place is under my protection. The human who feeds my blood without demand becomes keeper of this hall. None may harm him. None may threaten what gathers at his table. You cannot, Vale began. I am king, Cale said softly, and the words carried such weight that Vale physically staggered. I can. Vale's face twisted with rage. You've grown weak, Blackthorn. The pack will hear of this. A human keeper for your own children. I remake what needs remaking, Cale replied. As is my right. The children emerged from behind Ezra, moving to stand beside their father. Cale's hand came to rest on Cole's hair, the gesture startlingly gentle. Vale stepped back toward the broken windows. This isn't over. The Silver Fang does not forget. Neither, Cale said. Do I? Vale's smile returned, sharp and poisonous. Enjoy your sanctuary, Mr. Cole. I'll return with a hunter's writ, legal, binding, recognized by both councils, and I will watch this place burn. Then he was gone, dissolving into the blizzard. Ezra stood alone with the Alpha King and his children, surrounded by broken glass and guttering candles, his entire body trembling. Cale turned to face him fully. Up close, he was terrifying, beautiful and terrible, power radiating like heat. You have my gratitude, Ezra Cole, he said, and my protection for what remains of your life while they sit at your table. No shifter may touch you. I don't understand any of this, Ezra whispered. You don't need to understand, Mira said softly. You just need to keep being you. Cale studied Ezra with ancient eyes. The children will return tomorrow, if you permit it. And I, he paused, will ensure no further disturbance. Then he stepped through the broken window and vanished into the snow, with his children following like shadows. Ezra sank to the floor amid the glass and water, Vale's final words echoing, a hunter's writ. Whatever that was, it sounded like a death sentence. Ezra didn't sleep. He sat at the counter until dawn, waiting for Ruth to fire him. Instead, he heard different footsteps. Soft, synchronized, unnaturally quiet. 3 figures in dark clothes appeared at the shattered windows as the first gray light touched the mountains. They worked in silence. New glass materialized, fitting perfectly. Tools moved with precision. Within an hour, the windows were restored, not just repaired, but perfected, clearer than they'd ever been. One figure left a leather pouch on the counter. Inside were gold coins, enough to cover damages 3 times over, plus rent. By the time Ruth arrived at 8, the diner looked better than it had in years. What happened? Ruth asked, staring at the pristine windows. Insurance, Ezra lied. Emergency service. Ruth looked suspicious, but didn't press. Ezra spent his lunch break writing rules on cardstock. House rules. No harm under this roof. No questions that hurt. Seconds for the small. Warmth freely given, freely received. He taped it beside the door, next to the glowing amber symbol. The children arrived at their usual time that evening, but tonight felt different, lighter, despite everything. Lily carried a small cloth bundle, which she presented to Ezra with shy formality. Inside was a pressed wildflower, perfectly preserved. It's from our mother's garden, she whispered. Father says it's the last one. We want you to have it. Ezra's throat tightened. I can't take something so precious. You already have, Mira said simply. Later, while Ezra prepared their meal, he found Lily drawing on a napkin. A detailed map of the diner, showing hidden corners, safe spaces, places marked with tiny moons. What's this? Ezra asked. Secret places, Lily said. In case bad things come again. Now you'll know where to hide. Cole learned to fold napkins at the counter, creating elaborate shapes. Finally, he made a tiny crown and placed it on Ezra's head. For the Keeper, he announced. Ezra laughed despite everything. For a moment, the diner felt right. Warm, safe, full of simple joy. The bell chimed. A sheriff's deputy entered, badge visible, tired eyes scanning the room. Evening, he said. Got a report about a disturbance last night. Your neighbors heard breaking glass. Storm damage, Ezra said. All fixed. The deputy's gaze lingered on the children. Those kids okay? They seem underdressed. They're fine. Regular customers. Where are their parents? That's not really your business, Ezra said sharply. The deputy studied him, then left his card on the counter. If you need help, real help, you call. An hour later, Kyle arrived. He didn't burst through windows this time, just appeared in the doorway after closing, snow streaming from his coat. The children went to him immediately, and Ezra watched as he knelt to embrace them. A gesture so human, so paternal, it made his heart ache. May I speak with you? Cale asked. Ezra led him to the kitchen. Without the drama of battle, Cale looked tired. Ancient and tired. You've tested humans before, Ezra said, with your children. How many? 14 cities, Cale replied quietly. Over 3 years. Everywhere we went, humans either feared them, exploited them, or ignored them. You are the first to simply feed them. Why test at all? Why not just care for them yourself? Cale's amber eyes met his. Because civil war is coming to the shifter packs. My rule is challenged by extremists who believe mercy is weakness. If my children are seen as vulnerable, they will be targeted to hurt me. I needed to know if Sanctuary could still exist. And you exist, Cale said simply. That is answer enough. He handed Ezra a rolled parchment. Rumors are spreading. Other shifters, refugees from pack purges, are hearing of this place. They call it a safe house. Some will come seeking shelter. Others will come to destroy it. Wonderful, Ezra muttered. You can refuse, Cale said. I would not blame you. Ezra looked through the doorway at the 3 children sharing a pastry. They're just kids. Someone has to care. Cale's expression shifted, something between gratitude and grief. You remind me why this world is worth protecting. After he left, Ezra was cleaning when he heard it. A howl. Not from the forest, but from everywhere and nowhere, resonating through the cups and silverware. One single call. The windows frosted over instantly, and in the ice crystals a pattern emerged, the blackthorn symbol etched in perfect detail across every pane. The diner lights brightened. The air grew warmer. Ezra felt something settle into place, like a key turning in a lock he hadn't known existed. The safe house had awakened. And somewhere in the snow-dark mountains, enemies were planning how to burn it down. The frost pattern lasted 3 days before Vale returned. He came at dusk, when the diner was half full. Truckers, night shift workers, a musician in the corner. The children sat at their usual booth, hot chocolate steaming before them. This time, Vale brought 6 figures in gray coats, silver fang hunters, and 2 uniformed police officers who looked dazed, their eyes glazed as if under compulsion. Vale carried a scroll, ancient parchment bound with a silver seal. Ezra Cole, Vale announced, his voice carrying unnaturally. By authority of the Silver Fang and the Old Council, I present a hunter's writ. This establishment has been declared a rogue sanctuary, in violation of the separation accords. It is to be burned. The officers stepped forward mechanically. Sir, you need to evacuate. There's been a complaint. About what? Ezra's voice rose. Serving food? Harboring dangerous individuals, Vale supplied. Minors without proper guardianship. The authorities have been informed. Ezra saw the glamour in the officer's eyes. Vale had manipulated them, bent their minds. This is my business, Ezra said. These are my customers. You have no right. I have every right, Vale said, holding up the writ. This supersedes human law. The building burns before dawn. In the booth, Mira began to hum. Soft at first, then joined by her siblings, a sound that made the air shimmer. A ward. They were singing protection. Cole slipped a butter knife into his hand, holding it like a weapon, his jaw set with fierce determination. The door burst open. Kyle strode in, his presence filling the space like a contained storm. He wore no formal regalia, but his authority needed no symbol. The hunters instinctively stepped back. "Vale," Cale's voice was cold iron. "You test my patience." "I invoke law," Vale replied, trembling beneath confidence. "Blood duel, as is tradition. Your life against mine. Winner claims the hall." "I accept," Cale said immediately. "No," Ezra shouted. "No duels. No shifters deciding what happens to my diner." Both turned to stare at him. "This is human property," Ezra continued, voice shaking but steady. "Human business. You want to burn it? Do it in front of witnesses." He grabbed his phone, texting every regular who'd ever nursed coffee at his counter. "Emergency at Frost Haven. Need witnesses. Please come now." "What are you doing?" Vale hissed. "Inviting the neighborhood," Ezra said. "If you want spectacle, let's have spectacle. Burn this place in front of a crowd." Vale's face twisted with rage, but Ezra saw the calculation. Mass glamour was difficult. Witnesses were dangerous. Within 15 minutes, people arrived. Deputies, truckers, townspeople. Ezra moved through the crowd, pouring coffee, offering food, turning hospitality into armor. With each cup served, the diner grew warmer, stronger. The blackthorn symbol glowed brighter. "This changes nothing," Vale snarled. "The writ is binding." "Then use it," Cale challenged. "Burn the hall before these witnesses." Vale held up the writ, and it began to smoke. Black, oily smoke that crawled across the parchment like living shadow. When Vale spoke in a language older than civilization, the smoke solidified into flame. Not fire that warmed, fire that consumed, designed to burn sanctuaries and reduce them to ash. The crowd gasped as flames took shape in Vale's palm. Outside, the snow changed, falling harder, sharper, like razors. "Last chance, Keeper," Vale said. "Surrender the Blackthorn children, and I spare your hall." The children moved closer to Ezra. Cale's hand went to a weapon, and Ezra, standing in his diner with a coffee pot in hand, made his choice. "No," he said simply. Vale threw the fire. The flames hit the windows and screamed, not crackling, but the sound of metal tearing, of something dying that shouldn't exist. The black fire spread across the glass like oil, seeking entry. Outside, the silver fang began to chant, 6 voices calling the fire inward. Inside, Ezra moved, not away from the fire, but toward his kitchen, toward warmth, toward what he knew. "Help me with the cocoa," he called to the crowd. "Coffee, hot food. Everyone who can hold a cup, start serving." "Are you insane?" someone shouted. "The building's on fire." "The building's under siege," Ezra corrected, pulling out his largest pot. "And hospitality is how we fight back." He didn't understand why he knew this, but he felt it, the same way he'd felt the safe house awaken. Every act of service, every kindness, fed the sanctuary's strength. The fire consumed fear. Warmth was its opposite. Mira and Lily joined him, arranging food with supernatural speed. Cole stood guard, his butter knife gripped tight. The black fire found a crack and poured through, crawling along the wall like living shadow, leaving char marks, filling the diner with the stench of burning hope and safety. "No," Ezra said. He didn't shout, just spoke the word clearly, firmly, as he placed a mug of cocoa on the counter. The fire recoiled, stopped as if hitting an invisible wall. Ezra felt something surge through him, the safe house responding, recognizing its keeper's command. The windows shattered again. Cale and Vale exploded through the glass in a blur too fast for human eyes. They fought through reflections, appearing in mirrors, in chrome, in rain-slicked surfaces, each becoming a battlefield. When they manifested fully, they were terrible. Kale all, pale fury and ancient power. Veil twisted with fanatic rage, both moving with deadly grace. The crowd screamed. The deputy drew his weapon, hands shaking. "Hold the door!" the deputy shouted, making a choice. He grabbed a table and shoved it against the entrance. "Nobody in or out. If this place falls, we fall together." Citizens responded, barricading the door against the chanting hunters outside. The diner became a fortress, and Ezra kept pouring. Cocoa, coffee, tea, warm milk. Each cup served with shaking hands and stubborn grace. With every vessel filled, the black fire retreated. The walls brightened. The air warmed despite broken windows. The fire crawled toward the children's booth. "No," Ezra said again, louder. Golden light veined across the floor from where he stood. Thin lines at first, then growing stronger, brighter. Every meal he'd served, every kindness, every moment of warmth freely given manifested as luminous threads spreading through the diner. The keeper's bond, fully awakened. The black fire touched the golden light and dissolved, screaming. The Silver Fang hunters stumbled, their ritual breaking. Veil roared, breaking from Kale. "Impossible! The writ cannot be!" The golden light hit him like a wave. He staggered, smoke rising where the light touched. The hunters tried to flee, but the light found them, dissolving the hatred that held them together until nothing remained but ash. The writ itself caught fire, real fire, cleansing and bright, and crumbled in Veil's hands. Veil fell to his knees. "Mercy," he gasped, looking at Kale. "By the old laws, I claim mercy." Kale stood over him, terrible and still. For a long moment he said nothing. Then slowly, he nodded. "Rise. Go. Tell the packs what you witnessed." Veil lunged, not at Kale, but at Ezra. A desperate, treacherous strike, claws extending toward his throat. Kale moved faster. His hand caught Veil by the throat mid-lunge, lifting him effortlessly. No drama. No speech. Kale simply closed his fist, and Veil crumbled. Not to ash, but to nothing. Erased completely. Silence crashed over the diner. The golden light faded, leaving only candles and ordinary amber glow. The razor snow outside returned to normal flakes. Ezra took one step and his legs gave out. He hit the floor hard, vision swimming. He touched his temple. His fingers came away red. Flying glass had cut him. Kyle knelt beside him instantly. No longer a king, but something gentler. "You're injured." "I'm fine," Ezra mumbled, though the room was spinning. "You're not." Kale removed a ring from his finger, heavy silver set with an amber stone that pulsed with light. He pressed it gently to Ezra's temple. Warmth flooded through him, knitting torn flesh, stopping the bleeding, pulling him back from shock. When Kale drew the ring away, the cut was gone. "You risked everything," Kale said quietly, his amber eyes searching Ezra's face. "For children not your own. For creatures you barely understand." "Why?" "Because someone had to care," Ezra whispered. Kale closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, something ancient and heavy settled in his expression. "Name your price, Ezra Cole. The Blackthorn line owes you more than eternity can repay." Ezra looked around, at the frightened humans, at the 3 pale children, at the battlefield that had been his sanctuary. "A law," he said hoarsely. "Make a law. No shifter can take blood or force violence where warmth is freely given. Not just here. Everywhere. Make it real." Kale stared at him. Then slowly he smiled. The first real smile Ezra had seen. "Done." A howl echoed through the mountains. The howl's echo faded, but something remained. A resonance spreading outward from the diner like ripples on water, invisible but undeniable. Cale stood helping Ezra to his feet and turned to face the assembled witnesses. "By my authority as Alpha King," he said, his voice carrying centuries of weight, "I proclaim the sanctuary decree. No blood shall be taken where warmth is freely given. Any hearth that offers sustenance without demand becomes protected ground. Any hall that feeds the hungry without fear shall be honored." He drew a blade and cut his palm. Blood, dark as wine, dripped onto the diner floor. Where it fell, symbols blazed briefly before fading into the wood. "This oath is bound in my blood," Cale continued. "It will spread to every pack, every house, every shifter who answers to my name. The age of predation without consequence has ended." Outside, though no one could see it, the decree rippled outward through the supernatural world, a wave of binding law forcing ancient creatures to acknowledge, accept, obey. In packhouses across the territories, shifters felt the oath settle into their bones like chains made of starlight. The shifter world had been remade by the kindness of a diner cook. 3 weeks later, Frost Haven Diner looked nothing like before. The windows gleamed, bearing faint traces of the blackthorn symbol in frost that never quite melted. The sign outside glowed steady. "Frost Haven Diner. All welcome." The clientele had changed. Still the regulars, truckers, night workers, townspeople. But now there were others. A pale woman in old-fashioned dress who ordered black coffee and paid in antique coins. 2 teenagers with eyes that reflected strangely, sharing food and whispering in ancient languages. An elderly man whose shadow didn't match his movements, nursing tea. The supernatural world had found its sanctuary. The deputy had become a regular fixture, no longer investigating but protecting. He'd seen too much to pretend the world was simple. The Blackthorn children came every evening at 8:30, reliable as clockwork. Tonight, Cale came with them. He paused at the threshold, removing his gloves before entering, a gesture of respect to the keeper. Inside, he stood by the window, watching his children laugh over warm croissants, their faces bright with simple joy. "They're happy." "Here," Ezra said, bringing him coffee he knew Kyle wouldn't drink. "You could sit, you know. Join them." "Kings don't sit in halls," Cale replied, but his tone was gentle. "We stand guard." "Even kings need rest." Cale looked at him then. Really looked. Not as a subject or asset, but something he couldn't name. "You've changed more than laws, Ezra Cole. You've reminded us what we lost when we stopped being human." "You're still learning," Ezra said. "That's good. Means you're not too old to grow." The corner of Kyle's mouth quirked. Not quite a smile, but close. "Impertinent." "Honest," Ezra corrected. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the diner buzz with strange new life. Finally, Kyle set down the untouched coffee. "I should go. The pack doesn't govern itself." "Be safe," Ezra said, then softer. "Come back." Something flickered in those ancient eyes. Gratitude, perhaps, or the echo of feelings thought dead. "Always," Cale promised. He gathered his children and they left together into the snow, 3 small figures flanking their father like stars around a dark moon. Later, after closing, Ezra stood at the window wiping tables. Snow had returned, turning the street into a mirror of light and shadow. In the reflection, he caught it, a silhouette across the street, tall and powerful, watching. Not hiding anymore, just present, a guardian in the darkness. Ezra smiled at the glass. He turned to the door, ready to flip the sign to closed, then paused. Outside, barely visible through the snow, he saw them. Small figures, hesitant on the corner. Children, or something like children, soaked and shivering, too afraid to approach. Ezra flipped the sign to open instead and unlocked the door. He turned on the espresso machine, started warming milk, pulled fresh food from the case. The children would come or they wouldn't. But the light would be on. The door would be open. Because someone small might need cocoa. Someone forgotten might need kindness. Someone hunted might need sanctuary. And Ezra Cole, 24, tired, ordinary in every way that didn't matter, had accidentally become the man who changed the rules for an immortal realm, who'd turned a failing diner into a safe house that shifters honored and humans trusted, who'd proven that warmth freely given was stronger than any ancient magic. The door chimed. Small figures shuffled inside, pale and nervous. Ezra smiled. "Welcome to Frost Haven," he said, reaching for mugs. "What can I get you?" Outside, the Alpha King watched from the snow, and his expression, had anyone been able to see it, was something between wonder and worship. Inside, Ezra poured cocoa and arranged food with practiced grace, humming softly. After all, he had a kingdom to feed.